I'm Ethan Stone, the Prince of the Netherworld, and right now, I'm kneeling in the initiation hall of the Azure Peak Order, the most prestigious righteous sect, with my gut doing flips. Just yesterday, my dad, Lord Malachar himself, had clapped me on the shoulder with a heavy sigh. "Son," he'd said, "your old man has an important task for you. Infiltrate the Azure Peak Order, go deep undercover for a decade, and clear the final obstacle for our Netherworld's dominion over all realms." So here I was. In my pocket, I carried my meticulously brewed spirit rod, a potent poison guaranteed to unravel a spirit within 3 steps. I'd successfully passed the ridiculously easy trial of the spirit and had been accepted as Grandmaster Sterling's personal disciple. My plan was simple. Step 1. Find an opportunity tonight to slip this spirit rod into the old man's tea, ensuring he'd drop dead without a sound. With no one at the helm, the righteous path would descend into chaos. But of course, plans rarely survive contact with reality. As night fell, I used the excuse of familiarizing myself with the grounds and stealthily made my way to Grandmaster Sterling's personal retreat in the secluded peaks. The moon was dark, the wind howled, perfect conditions for poisoning. But as I neared his sanctum, I heard a bone-chilling slurp sound coming from within, like someone was sucking down some kind of liquid. My heart seized. I cautiously peered inside. What I saw nearly made me jump out of my skin. My master, Grandmaster Sterling, who'd been all serene wisdom and lofty pronouncements earlier today, was now seated cross-legged on a blood-stained stone. One hand gripped the head of a new disciple who'd just joined that morning. The disciple's body was shriveled, their face frozen in an expression of absolute terror. Grandmaster Sterling's mouth was pressed against a hole in the disciple's skull, his eyes slightly closed, a look of extreme pleasure on his face. He was sucking brains. Crap, my mind went blank. What the hell was my dad's intelligence network doing? Grandmaster Sterling wasn't some righteous leader. He was a full-blown eldritch horror, worse than my own old man. He wasn't a hypocrite. He was a genuine monster. I was so terrified, I wanted to activate the shadow warp my dad had given me for emergencies and peace out of there. But just then, Grandmaster Sterling seemed to sense something. His sucking motion abruptly stopped, and his deep, icy eyes snapped like a flash of lightning straight to my hiding spot. "Who's there?" The voice was soft, but it carried a chilling weight that made my very soul shiver. I froze, too scared to even breathe. Cold sweat immediately plastered my clothes to my back. Grandmaster Sterling slowly rose, casually tossing the shriveled corpse aside, like a used-up coconut shell. He took a step towards me, then another, each one feeling like a stomp on my heart. "Come out." My legs felt like jelly. I knew I couldn't hide anymore. Gritting my teeth, I decided, better to take a gamble than end up as his next juice box. I stepped out of the shadows, forcing a pure and curious smile onto my face. I pointed at the corpse, asking in a shaky voice, "Master, are you helping our fellow disciple with something?" I swear it was the most idiotic excuse I'd ever cooked up. A flicker of surprise crossed Grandmaster Sterling's face. Then he resumed his unfathomable expression. He looked me up and down, his gaze seeming to pierce my very soul. After a long moment, he finally spoke, his voice giving nothing away. "Are you afraid?" "Duh. Of course I was." My mind screamed, but my face remained plastered with that innocent grin. No, Master. I just found your healing method rather unique." Grandmaster Sterling fell silent. He looked at me, his eyes growing even stranger. Suddenly, he smiled. It was a genuine smile, as if he'd shed some kind of disguise. "Interesting," he murmured. "To think I have a disciple with such a steadfast spirit." Excellent. Steadfast spirit. My brain sputtered. Dude, look at my knees practically knocking together. Where's the steadfast in that? He seemed to lose interest, waving a hand. "Don't speak of this outside. Your master was merely helping him clear his inner demons. Go now, cultivate well." Clearing inner demons involves sucking out brains. I dare not ask. I quickly bowed. "Yes, master." Disciple takes his leave. I practically stumbled and rolled my way out of the secluded peaks. It wasn't until I reached my disciple's quarters that I collapsed onto the floor, gasping for breath. This was horrifying. This Azure Peak order wasn't righteous at all. It was clearly a demonic den. My dad basically threw me into a den of wolves. This whole undercover thing was a bust. I wanted to go home. The next morning, I showed up to morning lessons rocking two massive dark circles under my eyes and feeling completely out of it. I'd spent the whole night having nightmares about Grandmaster Sterling chasing me with a giant straw, trying to slurp up my brains. Morning lessons were held in the Sanctuary of Serenity, led by our second sister, Jessica Miller. According to my dad's intel, she was the Azure Peak Order's shining star, gentle, kind, incredibly talented, the undisputed darling of every righteous disciple. But after Grandmaster Sterling's little demonstration, I didn't believe a single punctuation mark of that intel anymore. Anyone who could be the second disciple of a brain-sucking old demon couldn't be good news. She was probably a soul-devouring succubus, eating people whole and spitting out bones. I walked into the Sanctuary of Serenity. Sure enough, Jessica Miller was already seated cross-legged on the cushion at the front. She wore a pristine white cloud-patterned gown. Her dark hair cascaded like a waterfall. Her skin was like snow, and a hint of gentle sorrow graced her captivating eyes. She was stunning. Seeing me enter, her sparkling, captivating eyes immediately turned to me, and she offered a gentle smile that could melt glaciers. "Ethan, dear brother, did you rest well last night?" Her voice was soft and sweet, like velvet laced with hooks, making your heart flutter with an unsettling itch. My heart sank. Here we go. This had to be some kind of mind control magic. I quickly activated my Netherworld soul-shielding chant, keeping a sliver of clarity in my mind, while maintaining my harmless, innocent expression. "Thank you for your concern, sister. I rested very well." A flicker of surprise crossed Jessica Miller's eyes. She slowly rose, her delicate steps bringing her closer. A faint, cloyingly sweet scent wafted into my nostrils. "You needn't be so formal, little brother." Her delicate, slender hand reached out, as if to cup my head. "From now on, your sister will take good care of you." My scalp prickled with terror. This was undoubtedly the Crimson Whisper Coven's soul-siphoned touch. If she so much as brushed me, my demonic core would be drained, and I'd become her personal power source. There was no way I'd let her touch me. Just as her hand was about to make contact, I executed a casual stumble, perfectly dodging her. At the same time, I secretly channeled a trace of Shadow Flame aura to shield myself. It was incredibly subtle, but I figured it would be enough to deflect her next move. Jessica Miller's hand froze in midair. The smile on her face also solidified. Her gaze was filled with unprecedented shock and a hint of confusion. My heart sank. Had she seen through me? My paltry demonic abilities were probably just a meager trick compared to this ancient demoness. This was it. I was going to die here today. However, Jessica Miller's next action left me dumbfounded yet again. She slowly withdrew her hand and bowed deeply to me. "Little brother, your spiritual resolve is truly unwavering. Your sister is deeply impressed." Her voice carried a hint of genuine, profound respect. My mind was a whirlwind of questions. The other disciples behind me were also staring, slack-jawed. In their eyes, this was the first time the gentle, kind Sister Jessica had ever shown such deference to a new disciple. Jessica Miller didn't look at me again. She turned and returned to her cushion, beginning today's sermon. But throughout the morning, her gaze kept darting my way, casually, intentionally, at least a dozen times. That look was incredibly complex. Curiosity, admiration, and even a hint of the thrill of finding a worthy opponent. Little did I know, Jessica Miller's heart was already a tempest. She was the Crimson Whisper Coven's chosen saint, a prodigy born once every 10,000 years. She had betrayed her sect and infiltrated the Azure Peak Order to cultivate their highest doctrine, the doctrine of detachment. The key to this doctrine was to sever all worldly attachments and desires, to achieve a heart utterly devoid of impurities. To this end, she used her charm arts daily to test everyone in the sect, watching the supposedly righteous disciples make fools of themselves before her, thereby strengthening her conviction that all men are but mortals. But today, she had hit a wall. The charm art she'd used on Ethan was her innate ability, 3,000 mortal passions. This art was formless, intangible, and went straight for the heart, let alone a new disciple. Even the long-renowned elders of the righteous path could never have so nonchalantly dodged it, without even a ripple in their spiritual awareness. And she felt an incredibly pure, incredibly cold power within Ethan that had effortlessly neutralized her charm. That was no ordinary righteous disciple's spiritual energy. It was a kind of steadfastness she had never encountered, almost a manifestation of the way itself. He's terrifying, Jessica Miller thought, her mind reeling. He is my ultimate challenge, my true path. Only with him can my doctrine of detachment truly be tested. I must have him. And me, looking at her increasingly fervent gaze, felt my knees weaken. This demoness was definitely plotting the most agonizing way to torture me. My master sucks brains, my sister's a succubus. This entire sect was horrifying. After finally enduring Jessica Miller's morning lesson, I felt like I'd just walked out of purgatory. I decided I wouldn't go anywhere else today. I'd just stay in my quarters and study an advanced version of the Shadow War, hoping to make it back to the netherworld in one go. But before my butt had even warmed the seat, a thunderous knock echoed from my door. "Ethan, little brother, are you in?" A hearty, booming voice called out. My scalp instantly prickled. It was our first brother, Mike Thompson. My dad's intel described Mike Thompson as an orphan grandmaster Sterling had found years ago. Ordinary talent, but genuinely simple-minded, diligent, and the Order's tireless workhorse. Bullshit! If this guy was simple-minded while serving under a brain-sucking master and a crimson whisper coven demoness, I'd eat my spirit rot right here and now. He was definitely a wolf in sheep's clothing. Who knew what kind of bloodthirsty old demon lurked beneath that honest facade? With a reluctant sigh, I opened the door. Standing there was a hulking brute of a man, built like a brick outhouse. His skin was tanned, and he had an honest, almost goofy smile that spread across his face when he saw me. "Little brother, Master asked me to check on you. Said you just joined and might not be used to things. Come on, Big Brother will take you to the training grounds to familiarize you with our Azure Peak Order's basic sword forms." He said this while throwing an arm around my shoulder and practically dragging me out the door without giving me a chance to refuse. His hand was like a steel vise, packed with explosive power. I swear my bones groaned under his grip. My mind wailed. This wasn't about sword practice. This was about finding a secluded spot to take care of me. He dragged me all the way to the training grounds in the secluded peaks. It was empty, save for massive boulders that were scarred and shattered by sword strikes. "Little brother, watch closely." Mike Thompson released me and walked to the center of the clearing, drawing a colossal black iron greatsword from his back, as exaggerated as his own size. He took a deep breath and began to demonstrate the Azure Peak Order's basic sword form. His movements were broad and sweeping, seemingly unremarkable, even a little clumsy. But I keenly sensed that with every swing, a fiercely dominant, wildly aggressive black energy was uncontrollably leaking out of him. That energy, I knew it too well. It was the purest primal shadow light. Only in the deepest abyssal depths of the netherworld could such terrifying blight be cultivated. Oh my gods! He wasn't even trying to hide it. My face went pale. He was trying to intimidate me. He was telling me not to mess around, or he'd cleave me in two with a single swing. Meanwhile, Mike Thompson himself was so frustrated he felt like spitting blood. He was an ancestor who had slumbered in the abyssal depths for 3,000 years. He had recently awakened, hoping to possess the body of a prodigy to reclaim his peak power. But an accident during the ritual had damaged his soul, forcing him into the body of a simple-minded youth with mediocre talent who'd been knocked out cold at the base of the mountain. Even worse, he'd lost most of his memories. He vaguely remembered being incredibly powerful, but how or with what cultivation methods? All forgotten. He could only follow these Azure Peak Order folks and start cultivating from scratch. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't gather what they call divine radiance. Instead, he kept leaking this dark energy that even he couldn't control. This frustrated him endlessly. Today, when he saw Ethan, he felt an immediate kinship for some reason, especially since he sensed a trace of dark energy from me. Something akin to his own, yet 100 times purer, He assumed this new little brother was a rare genius cultivating some special righteous technique, just like him. Little brother, come look. Mike Thompson finished his demonstration, panting as he called out to me. Is there something wrong with my sword form? Why does my energy always feel like it has a mind of its own? He was testing me. He wanted to see what I was made of. Cold sweat streamed down my back, my mind racing. How should I answer? Tell him his demonic energy was leaking? That would blow my cover instantly. A light bulb went off. I remembered an introductory netherworld theory my dad had once taught me. I cleared my throat, adopted a profound air, and slowly began, Brother, the issue isn't with the sword. It's with the heart. The heart. Mike Thompson looked confused. Exactly. I started spouting nonsense. Brother, you possess immense strength, and your sword is fiercely dominant. But our righteous path emphasizes yin and yang balance. You cultivate only the yang, neglecting the yin, so naturally, your energy feels wild and uncontrollable. As they say, solitary yang cannot thrive, solitary yin cannot grow. If, when wielding your sword, you can hold a thought of softness in your heart, perhaps you'll find that balance. This theory, in the netherworld, was used to teach young demons how to better conceal their demonic energy and masquerade as righteous cultivators. I never thought I'd actually use it today. Mike Thompson listened to my words as if struck by lightning, freezing in place. He slowly raised his greatsword, muttering, yin and yang balance. Yin and yang balance. I get it. I get it. He suddenly let out a triumphant roar, then resumed swinging his massive sword. This time, his sword form, though still dominant, possessed a subtle, indefinable flexibility to it. And that leaking primal shadow of light, it actually receded back into his body. Mostly, little brother, you're my guiding star. Mike rushed over, giving me a bear hug that nearly knocked the wind out of me. A single word from you is worth 10 years of my own struggle. From now on, you're my sworn brother. I gasped, my eyes rolling back in my head, but my mind was screaming. Great. Another ancient demon, converted by me. My master sucks brains. My sister's a succubus, and my brother's an ancient demon. Besides me, the actual undercover agent, there wasn't a single normal person here. Dad, did you send me here to spy, or to cleanse a den of monsters? Help me. I completely abandoned all thoughts of escape. Are you kidding me? Under the watchful eyes of an ancient, brain-sucking eldritch entity, a seductive enchantress from the Crimson Whisper Coven, and an unfathomable body-snatching ancient demon. With my limited abilities, I probably wouldn't make it to the main gate before being turned into a husk, a cultivation vessel, or a flesh puppet. My only way out was to continue playing the role of this steadfast-spirited, exceptionally gifted righteous prodigy. The better I acted, the longer I'd live. And so, my miserable career of acting began. Every day, I navigated the 3 old demons, my nerves constantly on edge, terrified that one wrong word or misplaced expression would blow my cover. For example, Grandmaster Sterling, for some reason, developed an intense fascination with my introductory netherworld, yin and yang balance theory. He'd often summon me to the secluded peaks late at night to discuss the way. Ethan, he'd say, pointing at the moon with a profound look, tell me, what is the way? How would I know? Me? A demon? I only knew that the devil gets his due and how to cause mayhem, but I couldn't say that. I had to paraphrase the manual of 1,000 shadows that my dad made me memorize, sugarcoat it with righteous terminology, and then deliver it to him. Master, I believe the way is formless, constant. Good and evil, right and wrong, are but 2 sides of the same coin. Like the moon, it waxes and wanes bright and dark. To cling only to light is to be lost in shadow. Only by embracing the darkness can one truly understand the light better. I almost said, only by embracing the darkness can one control the darkness. Grandmaster Sterling would always fall into a long silence, looking at me with admiration and a hint of pity. You suffer, my child. He'd pat my shoulder. To be born with such profound insight, yet to bear the judgment of the mundane world. Do not worry, your master understands you. Understands what? I was practically dying of fright here, and second Sister Jessica Miller gave me even more headaches. She seemed to view me as her final boss on her cultivation path, inventing new ways to test my spiritual resolve every day. One day, she'd send a bowl of lotus seed soup laced with love's entanglement. The next, a piece of intimate inner armor embroidered with passion's lure. Every day, I battled these insidious charm arts, relying solely on my internal shadow flame aura to protect myself, barely managing not to embarrass myself on the spot. But the more I resisted, the more enchanted and respectful her gaze became. Ethan, little brother, you truly are the only man in this world who can resist my charms. She'd sit on my bed, sighing softly. In front of you, I feel like a shameless demoness. Sister, you are. Please just stay away from me. As for first brother Mike Thompson, ever since my enlightenment, he treated me like his personal guru. He'd bring me every problem he encountered in his cultivation. Little brother, why is it that when I cultivate radiant blade force, I always feel an irresistible urge to cleave the nearest mountain in half? Duh, because you're a destructive demon at heart. I could only continue spouting nonsense. Brother, that's because your strength is too immense, and your sword intent is too scattered. You need an anchor to rein your power. For instance, you could imagine you're not protecting all sentient beings, but rather a small flower by the roadside. All your power is merely to ensure that flower isn't withered by wind and rain. I adapted my dad's techniques for subtly dismantling a person's mind, rather than outright killing them, and taught it to him. As a result, Mike Thompson had another epiphany. He practiced his sword with a single blade of foxtail grass for 3 days and 3 nights. In the end, with his 1,000-pound black iron greatsword, he successfully carved a lifelike skull into the foxtail grass's leaf. Little brother, I did it. I can control my power now. He excitedly hugged me, nearly sending me to the afterlife. I stared at the sinister skull carved into the leaf on the verge of tears. And so, under the care of these 3 old demons, I teetered on the brink of a breakdown every single day. What was even more despairing was that I discovered the 3 of them seemed completely unaware of each other's true identities. In front of me, they all tried their best to act like good people. My master was a benevolent elder to my sister. My sister was a gentle junior to my brother. My brother was a simple-minded disciple to my master. They all genuinely believed the others were truly good. Thus, our small sect formed an incredibly bizarre loop. 3 fake good guys surrounding me, the genuine bad guy, engaged in a daily, frantic acting competition with each other. And I, as the only one in the know, or so I thought, felt like I was living in a horror movie every single day. Sometimes, I even had a strange delusion. Was I the only undercover agent in this Azure Peak order? No, that couldn't be. No matter how well they acted, they couldn't hide that deeply ingrained aura of evil. I had to work even harder to play the role of a virtuous and upright disciple to survive among these monsters. To better disguise myself, I began to proactively perform heroic deeds. For instance, I heard there was a bully terrorizing a town at the foot of the mountain. I immediately reported it to Master, filled with righteous indignation, saying I wanted to go down and eliminate the menace. My real intention was to find an opportunity to slip away, see if I could find a secret netherworld contact in the human realm, and quickly call for backup to rescue me. Grandmaster Sterling smiled with approval when he heard my request. Good, he said, uttering a single word, then bestowed upon me a priceless sword that could cut through iron like mud. Go. Remember, punishing evil is promoting good. I clutched the sword, my heart pounding. Was he subtly hinting that I should suck the bully's brains too? I cautiously descended the mountain and headed straight for the bully's mansion. My plan was to just break a couple of his legs, steal his money, and then make a run for it. But as soon as I snuck into the bully's courtyard, I realized someone was already there. Under the moonlight, a figure in white, like a phantom, moved silently among the pavilions and courtyards. Everywhere she passed, the ferocious guards quietly collapsed like puppets, a look of blissful infatuation on their faces. It was second sister Jessica Miller. I nearly cried out in alarm. Why was she here too? I hid behind a rockery, not daring to breathe. I watched Jessica Miller drift into the bully's bedroom. Soon, strange, agonizing yet ecstatic screams echoed from within. About a quarter of an hour later, Jessica Miller floated out, a flush of satisfaction on her face, her cultivation seemingly having advanced. After she left, I dared to sneak in and check. The bully, who had been so arrogant and oppressive just moments ago, was now a drooling, cross-eyed idiot, his vitality clearly drained. That was brutal. I gasped, a chill running down my spine. That demoness truly lived up to her reputation. I didn't dare linger and turned to flee, but just as I reached the gate, I bumped into someone else. A hulking brute, carrying a massive black iron greatsword, was huffing and puffing his way in. It was First Brother Mike Thompson. Little brother, what are you doing here? He looked genuinely surprised to see me. I was just passing by, I quickly explained. Perfect timing. He grabbed me. Little brother, you've come just in time. I heard there's a bully here, oppressing men and women alike. I'll come to mete out heavenly justice. You keep watch for me. Without waiting for me to refuse, he kicked open the mansion gates. You scoundrel inside. Your big brother Mike is here to claim your worthless life. His shout woke up half the town. Then he saw the bully, now a drooling idiot. Mike Thompson froze. What happened here? What could I say? I couldn't exactly tell him his sister did it. Could I? I could only steel myself and start making things up again. Ahem, brother, you arrived a step too late. This scoundrel, his evil deeds were too numerous. He suffered a heavenly tribulation. Heavenly tribulation? Mike Thompson looked unconvinced. Precisely. I pointed at the idiotic bully, speaking with a serious expression. Brother, look, he's disoriented, acting like a madman. This is exactly what our righteous texts describe as a heart demon backlash. He must have committed too many evil acts, and his inner demons took over, leading to this downfall. Boundless heavenly venerable. Mike Thompson looked at the bully with suspicion, then at me. Suddenly, he slapped his thigh, an expression of dawning realization on his face. I get it. This must have been your doing, little brother. Huh. You must have used some incredibly profound, righteous secret technique, one that goes straight for the heart, to silently detonate his inner demons. Isn't that right? Mike Thompson's eyes were filled with adoration. Little brother, you're truly amazing. This kind of bloodless killing is far more profound than my brute force methods. Me? I begged him, could he please stop adding to my legend? I just wanted to be a quiet little spy. The next day, the story of how the 3 senior disciples teamed up, using peerless Taoist arts to invisibly punish the bully, spread throughout the town at the foot of the mountain. When we returned to the sect, we were given a hero's welcome. Grandmaster Sterling even called me to him, giving me a long, deep look. Ethan, you did well, he said. Better than your master. I didn't know if he was praising me or warning me. I only knew that from that day on, my status within the Azure Peak Order became increasingly subtle. The way they looked at me was no longer like an ordinary junior disciple. Their eyes held awe, admiration, and a hint of wariness. Great. I felt like I'd gone from a promising newcomer to a thorn in the side, whose achievements overshadowed his superiors. My undercover life was getting more exciting by the day. Just as I was constantly on edge, terrified that the 3 old demons would decide it was time to clean house, something unexpected happened. The Azure Peak Order recruited a new batch of auxiliary disciples, responsible for chores like sweeping, carrying water, and farming. Among them was a mute boy assigned to deliver my meals. He was about 15 or 16, very thin, and always wore a timid, eager-to-please smile. Because he couldn't speak, he was often picked on. The official disciples would regularly snatch his food or use him as a punching bag. I don't know why, but looking at him, I always remembered how I was mocked by other demon youths in the netherworld when I was young because I couldn't cultivate the highest demonic arts. Perhaps out of a feeling of sheer vulnerability, I always showed him a bit more kindness. I'd share half of the spiked pastries, which I dared not eat. That Jessica Miller sent me. I'd step in when he was being bullied, using my status as the Grandmaster's steadfast-spirited personal disciple to help him out. The mute boy seemed very grateful. Though he couldn't speak, he'd always greet me with a genuine, bright smile whenever he saw me. Then, like he was offering a treasure, he'd pull something out from his tunic for me. Sometimes it was wild berries he'd picked from his secluded peaks, other times a beautifully polished, shiny stone. In that sect filled with deception and fear, The mute boy's presence was like a faint yet real ray of light. I even had a strange delusion that perhaps this sect wasn't entirely full of monsters. Until that day, the Bladeheart Order's young heir, Arthur Vance Jr., arrived with a retinue of disciples for a friendly exchange at our Azure Peak Order. Arthur Vance Jr. was a leading figure among the younger generation of the Righteous Path, known for being incredibly arrogant and overbearing. As soon as he arrived, he demanded to challenge all of the Azure Peak Order's direct disciples. First Brother Mike Thompson was the first to accept. However, after my enlightenment, he'd been practicing how to control his power, so his attacks were held back. After 300 rounds, he actually fought Arthur Vance Jr. to a draw. This only made Arthur Vance Jr. more smug. Azure Peak Order? Is that all you've got? He sneered, his voice echoing across the training grounds. Your head disciple is a useless fool. Why don't you just rename yourselves the Loser Order? His words completely enraged the Azure Peak Order disciples. But Grandmaster Sterling hadn't spoken, so no one dared to act rashly. Just then, the mute boy happened to be passing by the training grounds, carrying a basin of water. Arthur Vance Jr. saw him, and a cruel glint flashed in his eyes. Well, look what we have here, a little mute. He pointed at the boy, laughing with his cronies. Tell me, if I cripple him, will these cowards of the Azure Peak Order even dare to make a peep? With a flick of his finger, a sharp wave of sword energy shot towards the mute boy's core. This was a vicious, insidious move, meant to shatter the boy's cultivation and leave him a cripple for life. I was standing not far away. Seeing this, a fuse blew in my brain. It was almost instinctual. Without thinking, I moved. I didn't use any righteous techniques. I used my most practiced art, my dad's personal teaching, the Shadow Stride. My body flickered, and I appeared in front of the mute boy. At the same time, my internal shadow flame aura erupted from me, raw and unrestrained for the very first time. I extended my hand, and my hand, wreathed in black demonic energy, seized the incoming sword energy. A harsh crack, the sword energy crumbled to dust in my grip. A stunned silence fell over the entire area. Everyone stared at me, dumbfounded, and my unblemished hand, still wreathed in black energy. An expression of disbelief crossed Arthur Vance Jr.'s face, and I, only after I'd acted, realized what I'd done. Crap, my cover was blown. I had actually used demonic arts in front of everyone for the sake of an insignificant auxiliary disciple. If my dad found out, he'd break my legs. I froze in place, my mind a complete blank. Just then, another anomaly occurred. A sudden gust of wind whipped across the training grounds. A chilling, malevolent aura, 100 times more terrifying than my own shadow flame aura, descended from above. I saw Grandmaster Sterling, who had been sitting calmly on the high platform, eyes closed in meditation, slowly open them. His pupils were no longer their usual black, but a deep, swirling gray, like a bottomless vortex. Har, my disciple, his voice echoed, as if from the deepest chasms of the netherworld, devoid of all emotion, and you die. Before his words finished, his figure vanished from his spot. The next second, he appeared before Arthur Vance Jr. He extended a hand and gently pressed it onto Arthur Vance Jr.'s head. Then, in front of all the Bladeheart Order disciples, he began to feed. Under the gaze of hundreds of disciples, the arrogant Arthur Vance Jr. deflated like a punctured balloon, shriveling before our very eyes. His face was contorted in ultimate fear and agony, but he couldn't even utter a single scream. A few seconds later, Grandmaster Sterling released his hand. Arthur Vance Jr. was now a skin-and-bones husk, collapsing to the ground with a soft thud. Silence. The entire training ground fell into a stunned silence. Everyone was absolutely petrified by this horrifying, bloody scene. The Bladeheart Order disciples, who had been so arrogant just moments ago, now had faces ashen, legs trembling like jelly, barely able to stand. Standing in front of the mute boy, I felt a chill shoot from my soles to the top of my head. He just devoured someone, right in front of everyone, without a shred of concealment. This wasn't a show of force. It was a blatant declaration of war. Had he lost his mind? Grandmaster Sterling finished, as if he'd merely squashed an ant. He slowly turned, his gray, emotionless eyes sweeping over the entire scene. Finally, his gaze landed on me, and on my hand, where the demonic energy had not yet fully dissipated. Crap, my heart sank. I'd exposed my demonic powers. Now, he would surely silence me. However, he merely looked at me quietly for a few seconds. Then, a flicker of approval, a faint smile, appeared on his face. "Ethan," he said, his voice returning to its usual gentle tone, "you did well." He turned to the petrified Blade Heart Order disciples, saying calmly, "Go back and tell your Order Master that Arthur Vance Jr., due to his numerous evil deeds, suffered a heart demon backlash and was executed here at the Azure Peak Order." "Another heart demon backlash? Seriously, old man, could you at least try a different excuse? You just used that one. You really think they'll buy heart demon backlash after you just drained him in front of hundreds of people?" But to my surprise, those Blade Heart Order disciples, as if granted a reprieve, scrambled away, practically tripping over themselves as they hauled Arthur Vance Jr.'s corpse. Not a single person dared to utter another word. A conflict that could have sparked a major war among the righteous sects ended in this incredibly bizarre way. And I, Ethan Stone, became the most dazzling protagonist of this incident. My feat of publicly taking Arthur Vance Jr.'s sword energy head-on to protect an auxiliary disciple instantly spread throughout the entire sect. And that dark energy on my hand? Everyone automatically misinterpreted it as an incredibly profound, incredibly dominant, never-before-seen ancient righteous art. Senior brother Ethan is so cool. To protect a mute kid, he actually dared to confront Arthur Vance Jr. head-on. Was that black energy the legendary divine radiance? So imposing. From today on, senior brother Ethan is my idol. Walking through the sect, I heard such discussions everywhere. Senior brothers and sisters who had once ignored me now respectfully greeted me as junior brother Ethan. I became the Order's undisputed hero, and the mute boy I had saved was utterly overcome with gratitude. He couldn't speak, so he just followed me everywhere, his clear, worshipful eyes fixed on me. Only I knew I was going crazy. That night, Grandmaster Sterling called me to the secluded peaks again. He didn't mention my use of demonic powers. Instead, he handed me an ancient, yellowed scripture. The cover, inscribed with ancient demonic runes, bore 3 massive characters: Soul Eater's Grimoire. Me? Wasn't this one of the 3 forbidden arts of the Netherworld, lost for over 1,000 years? It was said that cultivating it allowed one to devour all souls and use them as one's own. What? Why was he giving this to me? This method is called the Genesis Canon, Grandmaster Sterling said, looking at me with a serious expression. It is an incredibly dominant righteous art from ancient times. Cultivating it requires a steadfast will, otherwise, it is easy to suffer backlash and fall to the demonic path. You call this the Genesis Canon? Are you kidding me, Grandmaster? Do you think I'm blind and can't read demonic script? I see that the method you use today shares similarities with this canon. It seems you are a person of great destiny, Grandmaster Sterling continued. This canon is yours. Strive to cultivate it well, maintain your true heart, and do not stray from the righteous path. He gave me a forbidden demonic art, treating it as a righteous scripture, and he wants me to maintain my true heart, not to fall into evil. Holding the scorching Soul Eater's Grimoire in my hands, I felt my entire worldview shatter all over again. I suddenly had an incredibly absurd, audacious thought. My master, could he actually not tell the difference between good and evil? Once this absurd thought arose, it spread like wildfire in my mind. I began to secretly observe and test him. I found that Grandmaster Sterling, despite his terrifying power and morally ambiguous actions, possessed an infuriating lack of common sense in certain areas. For example, he'd mistake the Netherworld's Crimson Lotus, a highly toxic plant, and use it as a sacred healing herb in his concoctions. He'd treat the demonic scroll of Shadow Specters, a dark artifact, as a landscape painting, hanging it in his sanctum, claiming it had artistic flair. He even treated the Whisper Horn of the Nether, a device for transmitting top-secret demonic commands, as a common musical instrument, casually blowing on it. I became increasingly certain of my guess. My master, this ancient eldritch entity, had no concept of good and evil in his mind at all. His criteria for judging things were probably just one. He liked it, or he didn't. And I, the true-blooded prince of the netherworld, through several coincidental displays of steadfast spirit and that burst of divine radiance that he'd misinterpreted when I saved someone, was actually seen by him as the last hope of the righteous path, a beacon to guide him in understanding good. That's why he gave me this Soul Eater's grimoire, which he saw as powerful, hoping I'd wield that dominant power with a righteous heart. Understanding this, I felt even more despair. My dad sent me to infiltrate and dismantle the enemy from within. Instead, I become the enemy boss's personal life coach and priority protege. What kind of messed up situation was this? Just as I was agonizing over my master, second sister Jessica Miller stirred up new trouble. Ever since my heroic rescue of the mute boy, the way she looked at me had completely changed. Besides the admiration and curiosity, there was now a fervent, almost melting possessiveness. She was no longer satisfied with minor antics like sending pastries or clothes. She started night raids. That's right, night raids. Late one night, I was in my room studying the Soul Eater's grimoire, the Genesis canon, when my door was suddenly blown open by a fragrant breeze. Jessica Miller, clad in a sheer black silk gown that clung to her like a second skin, drifted in like a moonlit fairy. "Ethan, little brother," she began softly, her voice sensuous to the bone. "Long is the night, little brother, and sleep eludes me. Your sister has come to seek guidance on the way. Does discussing the way require dressing like that?" I nearly dropped the scripture in my hand, terrified. I quickly activated my shadow flame aura, wrapping myself tightly, watching her warily. "Sister, visiting so late might be inappropriate. We can talk tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Jessica Miller covered her mouth, chuckling softly, slowly approaching me. "Your sister can't wait. Little brother, the power you unleashed that day was incredibly pure, and it made your sister's spiritual resolve quite shaken." As she spoke, her black silk gown began to slowly slip. I was about to avert my eyes, but in a flash of inspiration, I shouted, "Sister, wait." Jessica Miller paused, her captivating eyes, like silken threads, fixed on me. "Oh, what wisdom do you have to impart, little brother?" I rummaged through my storage pouch, pulled out a book, and tossed it to her. "Sister, your spiritual resolve is shaken because there are still emotions in your heart. These emotions, as they say, are the greatest obstacle to cultivation." I began to speak utter nonsense with a serious expression. "Here, I have an ancient text from my homeland titled Civic Virtues and Community Ethics. It contains profound truths. If you can grasp even a fraction of it, you will surely sever the ties of emotion and achieve instant enlightenment." I had bought this book on a whim from a street vendor when I went down the mountain, or rather, when I had transmigrated down the mountain, originally intending to use it to learn how to better disguise myself as a human. Jessica Miller cautiously took the strangely titled ancient text. She opened to the first page, where it read, "Uphold justice, practice empathy, value diligence, pursue knowledge." She froze, as if struck by lightning. She stared at the lines of text she had never seen before, yet which seemed to contain some mysterious power, muttering, "Love? Love? But isn't the path one of detachment? Why does this canon speak of love? Could it be that true detachment first requires understanding great love, and then transcending it?" She seemed to enter a profound state of enlightenment. I see. I've been cultivating it all wrong. I only understood the small love of the self, not the great love of all. "Ethan, my little brother, thank you for your profound guidance." She clutched the Civic Virtues book, bowed deeply to me, and then, like a gust of wind, floated away, leaving me alone, utterly bewildered. I think I just enlightened another one. Great. I felt like I wasn't here to be an undercover agent. I was here to save all sentient beings. I was becoming the Azure Peak Order's beacon of righteousness. Just as I was gradually adapting to this new identity of beacon of righteousness and starting to consider whether I should just abandon the netherworld and stay here as a venerated leader, a top secret dispatch from the netherworld shattered all peace. The message was from my dad, Lord Malachur, sent via the highest level Shadow Raven dispatch. The contents of the letter made my heart turn to ice. My son, Ethan, may this letter find you well. Your father, 2 days ago, battled the foremost expert of the righteous path, Sword Saint Arthur Vance, in the Shadowfell Chasm. Alas, I was wounded by his path of unfeeling blade, my demonic heart damaged, and my time is short. My dad, critically wounded? I continued reading. The Azure Peak Order is the leader of the righteous path. Old Man Sterling's power is unfathomable. Now that your father is gravely wounded and the Netherworld is weakened, the Righteous Alliance will surely seize the opportunity. There is only one way to save our Netherworld from this peril. In the secluded peaks of the Azure Peak Order, beneath the Abyss Tower, lies sealed the ancient demonic artifact, the Void Forged Armor. This armor is the supreme treasure of our demon race, and only those of our royal bloodline can wield it. You must find every possible way to steal the Void Forged Armor and teleport it back to our realm within a month. This is crucial for the survival of our Netherworld. My son, I implore you, consider the greater good. At the end of the letter, there was a line written in blood. If the task proves too dangerous, save yourself. Your father, farewell. I held the letter, my hands trembling like leaves. The information dump was massive. My dad, the invincible Lord Malachur in my eyes, was actually critically wounded and practically on his last breath by someone called Sword Saint Arthur Vance. And the hope for our Netherworld survival was sealed right here in my undercover sect, which was full of villains. And he wanted me to steal it. Are you kidding me? Steal something from the Abyss Tower? Forget me, even if my dad showed up, Grandmaster Sterling would just swat him down and suck out his brains. This mission was a suicide mission. For the first time, I felt true despair. On one side, my critically endangered homeland that raised me. On the other, 3 unfathomable old demons who could end me at any moment. What was I supposed to do? For the next few days, I lost my appetite and couldn't sleep. Several times, I almost thought about just biting the bullet and revealing my identity to my master, who couldn't differentiate between good and evil. Maybe if he was happy, he'd think our Netherworld was unique and just hand over the Void Forged Armor, but that thought was quickly squashed. The risk was too great. What if he was just putting on an act? What if he actually knew everything and was just playing with me? Just as I was so torn I felt like I was going insane, things took another unexpected turn. The annual Grand Summit of Orders was about to begin. The Grand Summit of Orders was where the 7 strongest righteous sects sent their most outstanding disciples to exchange pointers. Basically, a martial arts tournament. And this year, it was being held right here at our Azure Peak Order. To welcome the other 6 sects, the entire order became a hive of activity. And I, Ethan Stone, as the now renowned beacon of righteousness under the Grandmaster's tutelage, was naturally entrusted with important responsibilities. Grandmaster Sterling called me to him. Ethan, for this Grand Summit, your master hopes you will represent our Azure Peak Order and compete. Me? You want me to fight those righteous prodigies? Wouldn't all my moves just scream demonic arts? My cover would be blown on the spot. Master, my cultivation is still shallow. I fear I cannot bear such a heavy responsibility. I quickly declined. No matter, Grandmaster Sterling said, looking at me with absolute trust. Your master believes in you. Though your cultivation method is dominant, if your heart holds righteous thoughts, then it is a righteous method. Go, let them see what true Tao truly is. He gave me no chance to refuse. Even worse, he gave me a new task. During this summit, elders from all sects will be present. The order will be bustling, and defenses will be stretched thin. Your master needs you to guard the Abyss Tower. My heart skipped a beat when I heard those 3 words. He wants me to guard the Abyss Tower? I looked into Grandmaster Sterling's deep eyes, which seemed to perceive everything, and a chill rose from the depths of my soul. Did he know something? I ultimately bit the bullet and accepted the task of guarding the Abyss Tower. For me, this was both a godsend and a viper's nest. The Abyss Tower was located deep within the forbidden grounds of the Azure Peak Order. 9 stories high, it was entirely black, radiating a chilling, ancient, and malevolent aura. It was said to seal all the demons and monsters that the Azure Peak Order had subdued since ancient times. My dad's void-forged armor should be sealed on the lowest level. Clutching the token Grandmaster Sterling had given me, I entered the forbidden grounds. Along the way, I could feel countless powerful divine senses sweeping over my body from the shadows. These were the elders and arrays guarding the forbidden grounds. But with Grandmaster Sterling's token, I passed unhindered and arrived at the foot of the Abyss Tower. The one guarding the place was a white-haired, seemingly senile old man sweeping the path. But the moment I saw him, my pupils contracted sharply. This old man had no trace of life force on him. He wasn't alive. He was a puppet controlled by supreme magic. My heart reeled in shock. To refine a cultivator of at least the Grand Ascension stage into a gate-guarding puppet, just how terrifying were my master's methods. The old man merely raised his eyelids mechanically when he saw me, then ignored me. I walked to the tower door, took a deep breath, and pushed open the heavy stone door. Inside the tower, cold winds howled and ghosts wailed. Countless imprisoned demonic entities shrieked and roared in the darkness. For an ordinary righteous disciple, just this aura alone would be enough to make them lose their minds and fall to madness. But I was the prince of the netherworld. This aura, to me, was simply too familiar. Like coming home, my internal shadow flame aura even began to churn happily on its own. I suppressed my excitement and began to patrol floor by floor. And just as I entered the Abyss Tower, outside, the Azure Peak Order welcomed guests from the other 6 sects. The Grand Summit of Orders officially began. The first day was for battles between young disciples. Our Azure Peak Order was led by first brother Mike Thompson and second sister Jessica Miller. Mike Thompson, after my enlightenment, was now able to initially control the primal shadow blight within him. When he went on stage, he no longer sought broad, sweeping attacks. Instead, he emulated me, practicing his sword towards a potted flower. His opponent, a burly man wielding twin blades, thought this was an insult. He roared and charged forward, but Mike Thompson simply touched his blade with the tip of his sword. The burly man, along with his blades, disintegrated into dust. The entire audience gasped. Mike Thompson scratched his head, grinning guilelessly. Oops, didn't control it well. And Jessica Miller was even more exaggerated. Her opponent was a stoic, ice-cold pretty boy known for his blade heart clarity. She went on stage and did nothing but pull out the civic virtues and community ethics book I'd given her. Then she began to recite, uphold justice, practice empathy, value diligence, pursue knowledge. Her ethereal, melodious voice, combined with those words filled with profound truths, created an incredibly bizarre yet irresistible ethereal aura of insight. As the Bladeheart Paladin listened, the icy coldness on his face melted. Tears streamed down. He dropped his sword, and right there, he achieved enlightenment, sitting cross-legged to reflect on his life. Jessica Miller won without a fight. The Azure Peak Order won 2 consecutive matches, stunning the entire audience. The righteous elders who had come to observe exchanged glances, seeing deep shock in each other's eyes. When did this Azure Peak Order produce such prodigies? The big man's method, seemingly clumsy, is actually a return to primordial simplicity, and the scriptures the woman recites, though unheard of, contain universal truths. Terrifying, the Azure Peak Order is unfathomable. And while the sect rejoiced over my senior brother and sister's brilliant performances, I, Ethan Stone, was encountering monumental trouble on the 9th floor of the Abyss Tower. As I patrolled to the 9th floor, I suddenly noticed that one of the seals on an ancient array was loosening. An incredibly powerful, evil energy I had never encountered was wildly leaking from the cracks in the array. The moment I approached, that power shook me, sending me stumbling back. Just then, an old, seductive voice directly sounded in my mind. Hey, such pure demonic energy. Little one, you're of a netherworld royal bloodline, aren't you? My heart reeled in shock. This tower holds an ancient monster who can instantly see through my identity. Who are you? I asked warily. I am General Kalen, the first war master of the abyssal depths, the voice declared arrogantly. 10,000 years ago, that old fool, Sterling, ambushed and sealed me here. Little one, if you release me, I shall help you. Unify the three realms. What say you? Me? I felt like I had just poked a hornet's nest. Of course, I couldn't release this first War Master Kalen. Are you kidding me? This old monster had been imprisoned by my master for 10,000 years. If I released him, the first thing he'd do is seek trouble with the Azure Peak Order. And then I, the guard, would be the first to suffer. Senior, please remain at ease, I said, casually cupping my hands towards the array. This junior has other matters to attend to. I'll be taking my leave. Wait, the voice calling itself Kalen urgently shouted. Little one, don't leave. I sense the aura of the void-forged armor on you. You're looking for it, aren't you? I paused. I can help you. Kalen continued to tempt. That demonic armor is secured with celestial chains in the abyssal maw at the tower's bottom by Sterling. Without my Void Sunder incantation, even if your dad showed up, he wouldn't be able to open it. If you agree to cooperate with me, I'll not only teach you the incantation, but I'll also impart all my lifelong knowledge to you. This offer was undeniably enticing. But was I Ethan Stone, the kind of demon to be so easily tempted? Yes. How do we cooperate? I shamelessly felt a stir. It's simple, Kalen chuckled. You merely need, during your time guarding here, to drip a trace of your royal blood into the cracks of this array daily. My demonic soul, suppressed for 10,000 years, is already severely weakened. Your royal blood is a great tonic. It will help me recover quickly. Once I regain 30% of my power, I can break through this damned seal. Then, with our combined efforts, success will be ours. This plan seemed perfect. I pretended to agree to him, then exited the Abyss Tower. The moment I stepped out of the tower, I felt something was off. I just had a feeling there was something fishy about this. How could someone as powerful as my master let the Abyss Tower's seal loosen? And it just happened to be when I was guarding it? And it just happened to have an old demon inside who could help me get the void-forged armor. It was all too convenient. So convenient it felt like a trap specifically laid for me. The more I thought about it, the more my skin crawled. No, I couldn't do as Kalen said. I had to find another way. And just as I was frantically worrying about the void-forged armor, the grand summit of orders outside reached its most crucial moment. After several days of competitions, only 2 people remained to contend for the title of Grand Summit Champion. One was our Azure Peak Order's second sister, Jessica Miller. Relying on her Civic Virtues book, she had enlightened her opponents all the way, without a single loss, becoming the biggest dark horse of this year's summit. The other was the Blade Hard Order Master, the father of Arthur Vance Jr., whom my master had drained, Sword Saint Arthur Vance. That's right, the same Sword Saint who had wounded my dad. He had come as an elder attending the observation. But because his son had been killed, he was consumed by rage. Disregarding his status, he forced his way into the competition, fighting his way to the end, specifically challenging the Azure Peak Order Grandmaster. Grandmaster Sterling, naturally, disdained to accept the challenge. So, the challenge fell to Jessica Miller, representing the Azure Peak Order. Everyone thought Jessica Miller was sure to lose. After all, that was this Sword Saint, the foremost expert of the righteous path. On the day of the decisive battle, the entire Azure Peak Order Plaza was packed with people. Arthur Vance, his long sword strapped to his back, clad in white, stood emotionlessly in the center of the arena. He was like a drawn blade, sharp and imposing. Jessica Miller, still in her white gown, slowly ascended the stage. In her hands, she still clutched the Civic Virtues book. Where is Sterling? Let him get out here and face death. Arthur Vance demanded coldly when he saw Jessica Miller. Jessica Miller ignored him. She simply looked at the book in her hands and began to recite softly. We must strive for a harmonious community. Demonis, you seek death. Arthur Vance was utterly enraged by her disregard. He drew the long sword from his back and thrust it towards Jessica Miller. It was a single sword strike, incredibly fast, incredibly cold. It contained the highest essence of his path of unfeeling blade. Everyone closed their eyes, unable to bear watching this beauty meet her demise. However, just as the sword tip was about to pierce Jessica Miller's brow, Jessica Miller slowly raised her head. She closed the book in her hands, looked at the long sword inches from her face, and gently sighed. Alas, even the starkest will bend to the heart's true longing. She uttered a phrase in a language I couldn't understand at all, an ancient tongue, as if from another realm. A spell? Then I witnessed a scene I would never forget. Arthur Vance's legendary, unyielding, unfeeling blade froze, a mere inch from Jessica Miller's brow, and Arthur Vance himself, as if paralyzed, stood rigid. The coldness and killing intent on his face rapidly melted, visible to the naked eye. In its place was a look of confusion, struggle, and a hint of a fervent, unprecedented tenderness. What did you do to me? He looked at Jessica Miller, his voice trembling. Jessica Miller didn't answer. She extended her hand and, with her fingertip, gently brushed the blade of Arthur Vance's sword. Clang! The unfeeling blade, which had struck terror into the entire netherworld, fell to the ground. Arthur Vance, the foremost expert of the righteous path, looked at Jessica Miller. Suddenly, his knees buckled, and he fell to the ground. He cried. He sobbed like a heartbroken child. I was wrong. I shouldn't have pursued this path of unfeeling blade. For the sake of the sword, I abandoned my wife, estranged my son. I am no man. He clutched Jessica Miller's leg, crying uncontrollably. The entire audience, once again, fell into a stunned silence. And I, standing among the distant crowd, watching this scene, had only one thought. What the hell did Sister just say to him? The Grand Summit of Orders concluded in an utterly absurd manner. Sword Saint Arthur Vance, enlightened by a single phrase from Jessica Miller, immediately abandoned his path of unfeeling blade, announced his retirement from the martial world, and went home to find his wife. The Azure Peak Order became the biggest winner. Jessica Miller also achieved legendary status, becoming the new idol of the righteous path. People said her Tao had surpassed that of the Sword Saint, reaching a godlike realm where her words commanded reality. Only I knew that the phrase she'd uttered was no profound truth. It was clearly an incredibly sophisticated, incredibly insidious Crimson Whisper Coven forbidden art that could directly alter a person's memories and emotions. This demoness was getting more terrifying by the day. And just as the entire sect was still reveling in the joy of victory, something no one expected happened. The Righteous Alliance suddenly declared war on our Azure Peak Order. A purge proclamation issued by the Oracle's Guild spread throughout the entire cultivation world. On the list, the Azure Peak Order was labeled the foremost demonic sect in the world. And the first, second, and third names on the list were none other than my master, Grandmaster Sterling, my sister, Jessica Miller, and my brother, Mike Thompson. The proclamation detailed their countless crimes, too numerous to list. For example, Grandmaster Sterling was accused of cultivating evil arts, consuming disciples' brains, and publicly slaughtering Arthur Vance Jr., the Bladeheart Order's young heir. Second disciple Jessica Miller was actually a Crimson Whisper Coven demoness who used charm arts to bewitch people, causing Sword Saint Arthur Vance's spiritual resolve to collapse. First disciple Mike Thompson was an ancient demon who had taken over a body, cultivating primal shadow blight and harming the innocent. Every accusation was irrefutable, though all were based on misunderstandings. This blew up completely. The Righteous Alliance, under the banner of executing demons and meting out heavenly justice, gathered 36 sects, totaling 100,000 cultivators. They split into 3 legions, marching on our Azure Peak Order. A storm was brewing. The entire Azure Peak Order plunged into unprecedented tension and panic. The ordinary disciples had no idea what was happening. They only knew that overnight they had gone from foremost righteous sect to foremost demonic sect in the world. And I, Ethan Stone, as the beacon of righteousness of this sect, was naturally thrust into the eye of the storm. Countless disciples came to me, asking what we should do. What could I do? I was desperate too. I went to Grandmaster Sterling. He was still his usual nonchalant self, in his sanctum, studying that scroll of shadow specters. Master, the Righteous Alliance is attacking. They say you're a demon. Oh, Grandmaster Sterling responded without lifting his head. Let them come. His tone suggested he was referring not to 100,000 cultivators, but 100,000 gnats. I then went to second sister Jessica Miller. She was engrossed in her civic virtues book. Sister, we're surrounded. They say you're a demoness. I know, Jessica Miller said dismissively, turning a page in her book. Just a bunch of mortals who don't understand great love. Finally, I went to first brother Mike Thompson. He was still practicing his micro-carving on the blade of foxtail grass. Brother, the army is at our gates. They say you're an ancient demon. Huh. Mike Thompson looked up, scratching his head guilelessly. How do they know? Me? You're not even pretending anymore, are you? It's all out in the open, isn't it? I felt like I was being driven insane by these three oddballs. The great battle was imminent, and I, the Netherworld spy, now found myself the only pillar of strength in the entire Azure Peak Order. My master was indifferent, my sister was lost in her studies, and my brother was a few screws loose. All the defensive deployments, all the work of reassuring the disciples, had fallen onto my shoulders. I, a genuine villain, had been thrust into the role of commander, leading the defense of the righteous path. This was quite possibly the most absurd thing in the world. The battle began 3 days later, on a crisp morning. 100,000 righteous cultivators, like a black tide, surged towards our Azure Peak Order's mountain ward from all directions. Various artifacts, flying swords, and talismans rained down upon the grand array. The entire Azure Peak mountain shook violently. The light of the mountain ward flickered, clearly not able to hold for much longer. The disciples and the sect all had ashen faces, their hands and feet cold. And I, standing before the main gate, watching the dense ranks of enemies below, felt an unnatural calm. Just destroy it all. Hurry up. I am tired. Just before the mountain ward was about to shatter, Grandmaster Sterling, who had been sitting serenely in the Grandmaster's hall, finally stirred. He slowly rose. Then, with one step, he walked out of the hall. With another step, he appeared outside the main gate, before the 100,000-strong army. He was still in his simple Taoist robe, white-haired, with a detached, otherworldly air. A mere nuisance. He looked at the 100,000 cultivators below and softly uttered 3 words. Then he raised his hand, a very ordinary hand, and then he gently pressed it down. There was no earth-shattering roar, no world-destroying light, nothing but the 100,000 righteous cultivators below, along with the very ground beneath their feet. Everything within a 100-mile radius, in that instant, silently became nothingness, like a drawing erased from a canvas. Clean, nothing remained. Only the leader of the Righteous Alliance, an elder whose cultivation had reached the late transcendent stage, had miraculously survived, being further away. He now floated in midair, utterly stunned, his worldview clearly shattered. You, just what? Are you? The Alliance leader asked in a trembling voice. Grandmaster Sterling didn't answer him. He merely looked up at the sky. Then his entire body began to transform. His Taoist robe tore apart piece by piece. His body began to grow infinitely tall, expanding. Countless gray-scaled, indescribable tentacles stretched out from his back, obscuring the sky. His head transformed into a monstrous, unspeakable form composed of countless chaotic geometric shapes and eyes. A chaotic and malevolent aura from primordial times swept across the entire world. I am an avatar of Nyarlathotep, the heart of chaos, the ultimate end of all things. A grand, cold voice, not of this world, resonated deep within everyone's souls. The Righteous Alliance leader didn't even have time to scream. His body and soul, under the impact of this aura, completely disintegrated and vanished. I stood on the main gate, staring blankly at my Cthulhu-esque master. I think I just pledged allegiance to something quite formidable. Just then, below the mountain, in the cleared expanse of nothingness, 2 more figures suddenly appeared. One was my second sister, Jessica Miller. She was no longer in her pure guise. She wore a revealing purple palace gown, and the vermilion mark between her brows had become a seductive crimson whisper coven flower. Behind her unfurled a realm of bliss composed of countless pink illusions. All who saw this realm would instantly fall into it, unable to escape. The other was my first brother, Mike Thompson. He was no longer simple-minded either. His body swelled to 100 feet tall, covered in black bone spurs, with a green face, fangs, and 3 heads and 6 arms. In his hands, he wielded a massive battle axe forged from endless primal shadow blight. Roar! He let out a sky-shaking roar, and the entire world trembled under his demonic might. I looked at my master, who had revealed his true form as an eldritch god, my sister, who had become a demoness, and my brother, who had transformed into a giant demon. My mind completely blanked. I thought what would follow would be an earth-shattering internal conflict. After all, an eldritch god, a demoness, and a giant demon, they didn't seem to belong to the same faction at all. However, the scene I envisioned didn't occur. After revealing their true forms, the 3 of them looked at each other, and from each other's eyes, they saw a hint of confusion. Seize. Sister. First brother Mike Thompson's 100-foot-tall, demonic body still emitted his guileless voice. You, how could you, brother? Second sister Jessica Miller was also stunned. She pointed at Mike Thompson, then at the indescribable master in the sky. And master, what is going on? Above, the massive eldritch god, composed of countless tentacles and eyes, also spoke with Grandmaster Sterling's voice, albeit with a grand echo. Jessica, Mike, you. The 3 of them stared at each other, clearly bewildered by each other's reveal. They seemed to genuinely have no idea of each other's true identities. They actually believed the others were good people. Was there anything more absurd in this world? Just as the 3 of them fell into an eerie silence, and the atmosphere grew increasingly awkward, a faint voice came from the main gate. All eyes, including those of the giant eldritch god in the sky, turned in unison to me. I stood on the main gate, facing the gazes of the 3 big shots, feeling immense pressure. I knew. Now it was my turn. I looked at my master, who had become Cthulhu, my sister, who had become a demoness, and my brother, who had become a giant demon. Silently, I pulled out a black, 9-dragon carved token from my tunic, representing the highest authority in the netherworld. I cleared my throat, and with the greatest courage of my life, tentatively asked, excuse me, I'm an undercover agent from the netherworld. Can I get in on this? The air, once again, solidified. My master's tentacles froze. My sister's seductive smile froze. My brother's roar caught in his throat. The 3 of them stared intently at me and the genuine Netherlord seal in my hand with an incredibly complex, indescribable gaze, like they were looking at a rare animal. After a long moment, second sister Jessica Miller was the first to burst out laughing. She laughed so hard her body shook, doubling over. An undercover agent? Little brother, you're actually an undercover agent. Immediately after, first brother Mike Thompson let out a thunderous, guileless laugh. Ha ha ha, I knew it. I just felt like you were family, little brother. So we're on the same team after all. Above, the giant eldritch god also let out a deep, rumbling laugh that seemed to shake space itself. Interesting. Utterly fascinating. I looked at these 3 villains roaring with laughter, and my mind was utterly confused. What was going on? This wasn't how the script was supposed to go, was it? In the end, our Azure Peak Order, in a way no one expected, unified the righteous path. There was no other choice. Faced with an ancient eldritch god who could casually wipe out 100,000 cultivators, a Crimson Whisper Coven demoness who could make even the Sword Saint kneel, and an ancient ancestor from the abyssal depths who had regained his memories, the remaining righteous sects had no option but to surrender. And I, Ethan Stone, Prince of the Netherworld, the most failed undercover agent in history, became the most awkward presence in this farce. After the battle, the 4 of us, master and disciples, held a confession session in the Azure Peak Order's Grand Hall. Grandmaster Sterling retracted his tentacles, transforming back into the detached, otherworldly old man. He said he wasn't actually Nyarlathotep. He was just an ancient entity who'd gained self-awareness in the primordial chaos. He had come to the human realm out of boredom to experience order and good versus evil, but it seemed it hadn't been very successful. Second sister Jessica Miller also withdrew her charm arts, transforming back into the gentle, shining star. She said she didn't actually want to be a demoness. She just wanted to find a quiet place to thoroughly study that civic virtues and community ethics book. First Brother Mike Thompson also returned to his honest, hulking form. He said he had regained his memories and remembered that he used to be quite wicked. But these past few years of being simple-minded in the Azure Peak Order felt quite nice. So he decided that from now on, he'd be a good demon. Then, the three of them simultaneously looked at me. Little brother, Grandmaster Sterling asked me kindly, what about you? You, the undercover agent, what are your plans now? What plans could I possibly have? I looked at the Netherlord seal in my hand, then at my dad's letter, saying his time is short. I sighed and recounted the situation in the Netherworld to the three of them, exactly as it was. I said my dad was critically ill. The Netherworld was now leaderless and being hunted down by the remnants of that path of unfeeling blade, on the verge of utter collapse. My visit was to steal, to retrieve our clan's sacred artifact, the void-forged armor. After I finished, the three of them fell silent. The atmosphere in the grand hall became incredibly solemn. I thought they were about to turn on me. After all, I had been deceiving them from beginning to end. However, Grandmaster Sterling slowly nodded. Understood. Then he said to my brother, Mike, go to the Abyss Tower. Bring that void-forged armor metal contraption to Ethan. And while you're at it, release that fellow called Kalen and have him serve as Ethan's bodyguard. He then said to my sister, Jessica, go deal with all the remnants of that Arthur Vance. Tell them, they're cluttering the scenery. Finally, he looked at me, a gentle smile on his face. Ethan, your master has decided. From today on, our Azure Peak Order will officially be renamed the Netherworld Expeditionary Force, Human Realm Liaison Office. And you will be our Chief Liaison Officer. We'll help you conquer the world. Me? I opened my mouth, but not a single word came out. 2 weeks later, the Netherworld. Ethan Stone, clad in the ridiculously cool void-forged armor, with the respectful bodyguard General Kalen by my side, and behind me, the righteous cultivator army that had unified the righteous path, led by my master, sister, and brother. We stood at the city gates. My dad, clinging to life on the city wall, beaten to within an inch of his life, saw me return with such a royal army and burst into tears of joy. My son has finally grown up. To think he actually managed to turn the entire righteous path. And looking at these three pillars of righteousness who looked more like villains than I did, and then at the cheering Netherworld citizens below, who thought they had welcomed their savior, I quietly sighed. I knew my undercover life, perhaps, had only just begun. Only this time, it seemed I was undercover for my own family and